Let's do. Let's see. Okay. What's up, Andrew? Give me 1 second. I'm just getting ready to post. Getting ready to post on the social media links saying I'm on YouTube Live. What up, everybody? 1 second. NFC playoff picture. Hopefully the sound is good for you guys. Let me know if it's not. Hopefully video feed is good for you guys. Let me know if it's not. Just posted on Facebook. Gonna post on Twitter real quick. Bear with me one second, peeps. Okay. Just the NFC playoff picture. That's realistic. All right, we ready? Hell yeah, let's go. NFC playoff seeding. All right, let's go. What's up, everybody? Andrew, haha, DC, what's going on? Maurice, Michael, what's going on, everybody? Rex, you're not too late, my man. I'm literally just getting started right now. So I know the bye week happened for the Vikings this past week. And it's crazy because it seems like I know the bye week is forever until the team plays again. But with the Vikings playing on Monday night, it just seems like it's being extended a lot longer than normal. But I'm okay with it. And one more thing before we get into this. I said on Thursday's podcast that I will be going back to 3 videos this week. I said that because I'm an idiot because I didn't realize I forgot that Thanksgiving was this week. So I guess I lied because I'm an idiot. So we'll be doing this YouTube Live and then I'll do the preview of the Seattle game on Wednesday. So that will come out on Wednesday. Normally it comes out on Thursday, but you're not going to watch it on Thanksgiving, and nor should you. You should go out and enjoy football and hang out with your friends and family. So let's go ahead and talk about the way things stand with the Vikings, because the Vikings didn't play, but we saw a lot play out as far as the NFC playoff standing. So as it stands right now, let me pull this image up. As it stands right now after week, what was this week? This is week 12, I think. As it stands right now in the NFC, first seed, San Francisco at 10-1. Second, Saints 9-2. 3, Packers 8-3 because they're tied with the Vikings now. The 4 seed is the Dallas Cowboys 6-5, and the 5 and 6 seeds are Seattle and Minnesota. And so, with that said, I know the Rams and the Ravens, they play tonight. I think this is pretty much the last ditch effort for the Rams to stay alive. They're the only ones that have a chance as far as they are in the hunt. I think technically the Panthers and the Eagles are still in it. I believe they're both 5 and 6. I think there's one other team out there. I'm not sure. But quite honestly, I'm not really worried about any of those teams catching up to the Vikings unless something catastrophically happens with the Vikings with their remaining 5 games on the schedule. I think outside of the Rams, what you see as far as the 6 seeds right now, that's what it is. It just depends on the seeding, how will that turn out once the end of the season goes. So if the Rams win tonight, because right now they are 6-4, if I'm not mistaken, 6-4. So if they win, they stay alive. But even still, they play Arizona twice as far as that with their remaining schedule. They play Arizona twice, which is a tough out for Arizona. They play Seattle, the Niners, and the Cowboys. So I think no matter what, the Rams are out. So these 6 teams that you see, Niners, Saints, Packers, Cowboys, Seattle, and Minnesota, I think this is it. We just need to figure out the seeding. Now, as far as if the Vikings beat the Seattle Seahawks next Monday, I think you're looking at a realistic opportunity for them to be either the 2nd seed or the 3rd seed. I think the 4th seed is going to be the Dallas Cowboys, or who knows. So not to backtrack, but going back to those teams in the hunt, I wouldn't be surprised if the NFC East is won at 9-7, just based on how the Cowboys and the Eagles have been playing this year. I wouldn't be surprised. So whoever wins the NFC East, no matter what happens, they're going to be a 4 seed. But I think if the Vikings can beat Seattle this upcoming Monday night next week, then you're looking at either possibly a 2nd or 3rd seed, depending on how they do against Green Bay and the rest of their schedule. And if that's the case, if that is the case, win the North. I don't give a damn what happens. Just win the North, because now with the Packers and the Vikings, they're both tied at 8-3. If you win the NFC North division, that gives you a great chance, because no matter what happens, whether you're a 2 or 3 seed, either way, come playoff time, you at least get the opportunity to host a playoff game, right? So the Vikings are undefeated at home, US Bank Stadium, host a damn playoff game. And then if you lose, because I think coming into this year, and I think even still now, I'll do the preview of Vikings versus Seattle, that I think this is just going to be too tough of a game for the Vikings to win. But if they lose to Seattle next Monday, I think no matter what happens, the Vikings will be the 6th seed. If they don't somehow win the NFC North still, if the Packers, they've got an easy schedule the rest of their games, but unless the Packers just fumble their way out of the NFC North division title, I think the Vikings will be the 6th seed regardless. If that is the case, because yes, the 5th seed is there, but I think battling between the Niners and Seattle, I think whoever wins that division, they'll be the 1 seed, and whoever loses, they'll be the 5th seed. And so let's see. I want to talk about teams that you feel good about facing in the playoffs. So before we get into that, let's see with some of these thoughts you guys have. Jason says we're definitely going wild card because Packers have an easy schedule. I don't blame that thought logic, because they're playing the Giants next week, right? So they're going up against Daniel Jones. We're going up against Seattle. And Seattle's just a tough ass place to play, man. You're playing at CenturyLink, right? They're playing at, hold on. My mind's all over the place. Hold on 1 second. I swear they're playing at Seattle. 1 second. They are playing at CenturyLink. Okay. So yeah, they are playing Seattle at CenturyLink. That's just a tough ass place to play. And now I will say this, as far as a beacon of hope, well, let me bring this up. Let me bring up the schedule for Seattle real quick. NFC West. Okay, there we go. So there is a beacon of hope for the Vikings. I think the Vikings will probably lose that game, but Teddy Bridgewater and the New Orleans Saints, they marched into Seattle and beat the Seahawks too. So there is a chance that you can beat Russell Wilson. They're not necessarily the superheroes of the Avengers or DC United or whatever. They're not necessarily the big bad team that's just going to lose or going to win every single time. There is a chance any given Sunday, anything can happen. Their offensive line is shitty, but it's Seattle. It's Russell Wilson. He's an MVP candidate. It is what it is. I think there's a chance they're probably going to lose, but there is a chance that they'll win. But it is, if you can win this game and you run the table the rest of the way, man, look out. That'll be nuts. Because then if you run the table, you finish 13-3, that'd be pretty damn tough. Let's see. If the Vikings, Superstar says, if the Vikings win out, what do we need to hope for to get a first round bye? Well, I think so the 4th seed is locked up with the NFC East regardless, in my opinion. And the 1st seed, I think, yes, it's a possibility that the Vikings could get a 1st seed if they run the table, especially if they beat Seattle. But I'm just going to say, realistically speaking, the 1st seed is going to be a lock between the Niners or the Seahawks, or maybe even the Saints. Maybe they even move up. But I think realistically, if the Vikings can get a 2nd seed, let's look at the Saints schedule real quick. The Saints, because right now they are the 2 seed. The Saints right now, they've got, shit. Okay, so they narrowly just beat the Panthers this past yesterday. They've got the Falcons, which they're going to win that game, whatever. They've got the Niners. I'm going to say that's a loss. They've got a Colts. That's a tough ass team. That could be a loss. They've got the Titans at Tennessee. They've got the Titans. That's a tough ass game. So there's a chance out of their last five, they got the Panthers to end the season. Depending on where they're at, the Panthers are as far as in week 17. We'll see how that plays out. It sucks because I think the Panthers are a lot better than what their record indicates. Because right now the Panthers are 5-6. They're a lot better than what they are. They narrowly lost to the Saints yesterday. But let's say they've got a tough 3-game stretch after they play the Falcons next Sunday. They've got the Niners, Colts, and Titans. And let's say if they can go 1-2 out of that stretch, and let's see, they're 9-2, 11-4. If they can go 11-5 or 12-4, I think the Saints' downfall is the best case scenario for the Vikings to take over. They have to win out, though. You have to beat Seattle. You have to beat Green Bay. I think that's what matters. I think that's the beacon of hope because the Packers, their schedule is easy, but anything can happen. But the Saints, they've got a tough three-game stretch in the middle of their 5 games. Let's see. Let's talk about actually, let's look at one more of you guys' thoughts real quick before we get in teams that I'm comfortable playing in the playoffs. Now, again, this is assuming that the Vikings are on their P's and Q's. The Vikings are coached up well. If the offense is clicking on all cylinders, if the defense is okay, teams that I feel good about facing in the playoffs and teams that I am absolutely scared of. Let's see. Before we get into that, Nick Trainer brings up a very good point. He says Seattle is actually worse at home and undefeated on the road. That's true. So Teddy Bridgewater went into Seattle, beat them, and also Seattle, their weakness is at home versus on the road. So that's a good point as well. So let's talk about teams that I feel good about facing. So as it stands right now, we already talked about the 6 seeds right now. Out of the 6 seeds, so take Minnesota out of it. So out of the 5 remaining teams in the NFC, 3 of them I feel good about as far as the Vikings have a chance. I'm not going to say that the Vikings will outright win, but 3 of them I feel good about the Vikings facing. I feel good about the Vikings facing New Orleans, whether it's at home or at the Superdome. I feel good about how the Vikings match up with them. I feel Michael Thomas is the only they got Ted Ginn Jr. as well, but Michael Thomas is really the only factor in their passing game that I'm really, really scared of. But with our secondary, anything's possible, like Kevin Garnett said with the Celtics. But I feel good about the Vikings playing the New Orleans Saints. I feel good about the Vikings playing the Packers, whether it's at home or at Lambeau, because it's funny because of the 3 losses that the Vikings have, one can be attributed to the coaching staff, one can be attributed to Kirk Cousins, and one can be a combination of the 2. So the one loss that Kirk Cousins is solely responsible for is Green Bay at Lambeau Field, because the Vikings, they gave up 21 points in the first quarter. They shut them down the rest of the way at Lambeau Field against the Packers. But then the Vikings had a chance to win that game, but Kirk Cousins really just soiled himself in front of the TV cameras. As far as the coaching staff, their primary loss was Kansas City at Arrowhead. I think Kirk Cousins played his ass off, but the coaching staff, they lost that game. But then the combination of the 2, Kirk Cousins and the coaching staff, was Chicago. And I know the offensive line, they look bad, but if you didn't expect Chicago to make the offensive line look bad, then that's really a you problem. But really, that was a combination between Kirk Cousins and the coaching staff. But I feel bad. Now, as far as the Packers now, because the Packers faced us back then, that was week 2. The Packers faced us when we were that just run first offense, which we still are, but we've opened up the passing game a lot more. So we're a different team this time around when we face them, even when we faced them on December 23rd, 2 days before Christmas. We're a different team now than what they saw in week 2. So I think this new Vikings team now, I feel good about them playing the Green Bay Packers and the Dallas Cowboys, not just because we beat them already, but just because how we match up with them. And I talked about that, the week before last. Was it the week before last? Yeah, the week before last, before the Broncos game, how I talked about how the Vikings could play and how they could beat the Dallas Cowboys for the win. I feel good about those 3 teams, Saints, Packers, and Cowboys. The 2 teams that I am just scared of is Seattle Seahawks, for obvious reasons, Russell Wilson, he just spins around Tasmanian devil like all around the pocket, even though his offensive line collapses. It doesn't matter. This dude's an MVP candidate. This dude just makes plays left and right. The receiving weapons they have, Tyler Lockett, goodness, what's his name? Metcalf, DJ Metcalf. They've got they also picked up Josh Gordon, but I haven't seen much of him at all. They've got Chris Carson, who fumbles the ball a lot, but they also got the other guy. Who's the other guy? Is it Rashad Penny? I think it's Rashad Penny. This is going to kill me. Let me look it up. I think it's Rashad Penny. Yes. Okay, so they got those two running backs. So they're good. They've got a legit set of offensive weapons to use along with Russell Wilson. So, and depending on where we were to play them at, I think actually, I guess what's this guy? What's his name? Trainer? Goodness, sorry. I hope I got your name right. Nick Trainer, like you brought up. I would say it may be better to play the Seattle Seahawks at home at US Bank Stadium because they're undefeated at US Bank Stadium, but Seattle, they're undefeated on the road too. So maybe it's one of those clashes of, the unstoppable force versus the immovable object. So I don't know, but maybe the area of opportunity would be more served at Seattle at CenturyLink. So I'm not sure. So they scare me. And the San Francisco 49ers, bro, they scare the shit out of me, dog. When they first started their year, they're 10-1 right now. When they first started their undefeated streak, they went up really against teams that were a bunch of nobodies. They pretty much just stacked on teams that weren't really good. And I say, you know what? They got to play somebody. I'm not really convinced. They narrowly lost to Seattle, and then they beat the brakes off of the Green Bay Packers and Aaron Rodgers. And so you can make the argument that Nick Bosa is definitely Defensive Rookie of the Year. I think he's a shoo-in for that. But then also he could be Defensive Player of the Year as well. So I think Nick Bosa has been great. They also got, I think Richard Sherman is a little bit overrated. He got, Chris Collinsworth. Was that Sunday night? Yeah, Sunday Night Football. Yeah, Packers Niners. Chris Collinsworth was just hyping this dude Richard Sherman up all night long. Look, here's a guy, Richard Sherman. Oh, man, I tell you, look at him. He stays in his stance. He can feel the receiver while looking at Aaron Rodgers at the same time. And then it was him for the reason why the Niners gave up a touchdown later in the game. It was already a runaway game, but he caused the Niners to give up a touchdown because of those two boneheaded penalties on, I think it was Aaron Jones. He pushed him once out of bounds and then once on the end zone or once in the end zone. I just think, and we saw what Stephon Diggs did to Richard Sherman with the Niners last year at home, US Bank Stadium. Richard Sherman, I think he's a bit overrated. I think he's beyond his sales. He can make plays, but he's not all that great. He's pretty much a zone corner, but they still got players. They've got Deebo Samuel. They traded for Emmanuel Sanders. Jimmy Garoppolo is one of those guys that you're not going to put the whole game on him. You're going to let the defense do all the work. Don't make mistakes. But even still, he's playing a lot better than a game manager as of late. So maybe he's starting to get his rhythm going just a little bit. And then they've got Tevin Coleman. They've got a strong run game. They've got that tight end Kittle, who might be, I don't even think it's a might at this point. I think he's the best tight end in the league. I think he really is, Kittle. And their defense is spectacular. So that team, they scare me. They are legit. They're just a physical team. I think they really are the team that the Vikings wish that they could have been. Where Mike Zimmer wishes that they could have been like the San Francisco 49ers. Very physical defense. You got playmakers, very strong running game, and you got a quarterback that just don't make mistakes. I think that's the blueprint that Mike Zimmer wants for this team. It's just, it could be that way, except the defense hasn't been anywhere near as good as the San Francisco 49ers have been this year. So let's see what other thoughts you guys have. Let's see. Is Thielen coming back for next week's game? I have no idea. And this was asked by Daniel Brandt. I have no idea. I haven't seen any updates on Adam Thielen. Hopefully he does come back. Hopefully Harrison Smith, that's not an injury that's lingering on for an extended period of time either. You need Adam Thielen to beat the Seattle Seahawks next week. You need all hands on deck to be available. If he's not there, that's going to be a little bit tougher. I know we've got Dalvin Cook, we've got the run game, but we need Adam Thielen. So I have no idea. Hopefully he's back. Teddy B says, Randy, look at the Niners' next 3 games. They literally could lose 3 straight games. Thoughts? Well, let's look at their schedule. Let's look at their schedule real quick. Niners. What y'all looking like? 10-1. Oh, ooh, okay. They've got Baltimore. So I think that will be a big test because what you saw when the Baltimore Ravens, when they played the New England Patriots, you saw the Patriots, it's either between the Patriots or the Niners, which is the best defense in the NFL. I would probably, I don't know. I think it's a pick 'em. I don't think you could be wrong. I would probably lean more towards the San Francisco 49ers, even though the Patriots, they're led by Bill Belichick, the greatest coach of all time. He's a defensive guru. They've got Stephon Gilmore, the best cornerback in the league. But you saw what the Ravens did to the New England Patriots. So I think how we see the Niners defense perform against the Ravens will be telling. But you're right. That is a very good point because they play the Ravens. They play the Saints. I think they'll beat the Saints. I think they'll beat the Falcons. I think they'll beat the Rams. And then they'll end the season with Seattle. So I think if you're looking at, I think worst case scenario, the Niners finished 3-2 in their last 5 games to end the year 13-3. And so if the Vikings were to win out 13-3, I'm not sure how that would play out conference record wise. I have to look a little bit more into it. But that's your best case scenario. So it's true that they could lose. Let me go back to that schedule again. They could lose 2 games. I'm not going to say 3. So hopefully that answers your question. Let's see. Todd Robinson says, who will start at safety this week? Well, that depends. We need to know if Anthony Harris is good, if Harrison Smith is good. If one of our safeties are out, so if Harris or Harrison Smith are out, one of those 2 guys, not both, then damn it, start Jaron Kearse over Andrew Sendejo. I know Andrew Sendejo, he had the interception, but Jaron Kearse made way more plays throughout the course of that game against the Denver Broncos, and I think he's just a better safety. I think Jaron Kearse is just a better safety. He's perfect for a safety he's not quick enough to really keep up with wide receivers as a corner. I know you can have him in the big nickel packages, but he's a perfect safety. I would have started him quite honestly once it was found out that Anthony Harris was going to be out that game against the Denver Broncos. I would have started Jaron Kearse, but hopefully it's Jaron Kearse. Now, that's granted if Anthony Harris and Harrison Smith are one of them aren't healthy. Oh, FR Maria 09. Do you feel this year it's meant to be for us? Time to win? I'm not saying it. You know why? Because every time that the stars align for the Vikings, every time that this is it, this is your moment. For instance, right? The Packers, they lost. They're now tied with the Vikings at 8-3, even though the Packers, they have the tiebreaker over the Vikings. So basically, even though we have the same record, the Packers are essentially a half game up on the Vikings because of the tiebreaker. But all stars are aligned for the Vikings to control their own destiny and win the NFC North. But every time I do that, every time I say, okay, fine, I remember, goodness, what was that Arizona game, week 17, regular season, win and you're in, and they lost off of a Hail Mary. And I think it was one of the McCown brothers. I don't know if it was Luke McCown or maybe it was Josh McCown. I can't remember. Through a Hail Mary, I think it was like 40 yards out. And they lost off of that play and they were eliminated from going to the playoffs. Every single time where it's win and you're in, this is it. They usually fall apart. So I'm not saying it. It's a line for them to do it. Whether they do it or not, we'll see. Let's see. Lucas St. George. Oh, I'm glad you brought this up. I forgot all about this. Lucas St. George said, someone asked J-Ron if he had a future in Minnesota. He replied and said no. So I did see that. He was on Twitter. He went on a bit of a, I wouldn't say Twitter rant. He was just kind of responding to a lot of followers on Twitter. And he did say no. I did see that, Lucas St. George, that he said, no, I don't have a future here when someone asked him that. And I don't know if it has something to do with, I don't know if it's because we have Anthony Harris, we're going to keep him long term, or if it's because of the incident that Jaron Kearse had, DUI and driving with a loaded weapon. I'm not sure what's going on with that, but I mean, I don't blame them. If the Vikings are moving on because of that, I don't necessarily blame them for doing that at all. Jaron Curse is a talented ass player. I would start him if one of our safeties are out. I hope that we can keep him. But you know what? I will say this. I thought that there are a lot of times where I think players will that they played well enough to earn a big time contract. So I thought maybe Anthony Harris could have been one of those guys. I think we signed him to his tender, if I'm not mistaken, last offseason. But I thought there was a chance that he may have could have played for a big contract based on his performance in 2018, and it didn't really work out that way. So maybe the same thing is to happen for Jaron Curse. If we can keep him, that would be great. But if he leaves, I'm not going to be all that shocked about it. Um, RWF 1984 says, "Can we not talk playoff matchups until Vikings are officially in the playoffs?" Come on, man. Why y'all so negative, man? Y'all so negative, man. Vikings. I get what you're saying, RWF. I get what you're saying. I think the Vikings, they're going to make the playoffs. Not necessarily because the Vikings are going to smash their way through. Anything can happen the rest of the season. But I think where it stands right now, the Eagles, I mean, even if the Eagles were to make the playoffs, they're going to make it because they beat the Cowboys and they won the NFC East, not because they won a wild card spot, because the NFC East, they're only going to get one team, and that's whoever's going to win the NFC East division. And then the Panthers, I think they're falling apart. And I forgot who the other team is. Actually, you know what? Let me see who that other team is. The Rams are the only team. So if they win against the Ravens tonight, okay, we can talk about it. But I think the 6 teams currently as it stands in the NFC seeding picture, I think that's who it's going to be. It's just a matter of how the seeding is going to line up after week 17. So let's take a look at, because I know I'm missing a team in the hunt. One more team. So the Rams, Eagles, Panthers, and there's one more. One more. Oh, the Bears. Oh, shit. Man, the Bears ain't going to the playoffs, though. Mitch Trubisky, I was so wrong. I thought the Bears were going to win the NFC North division. I thought they were going to kick ass. And that was in spite. I didn't think Mitch Trubisky was going to get any better than what he was. I just thought that the coaching would get better with Matt Nagy, and it hasn't done that. So, come on. The Bears, no. Eagles, no. If they make it, it's because they won the NFC East division, which means the Cowboys, they're not going to make the playoffs. But even still, I think the Cowboys, they've got the edge over the Eagles. And then the Panthers, absolutely not. And then the Rams, we'll see what happens. But even still, they've got a tough remaining schedule in their last 5 games. I think the Vikings will make the playoffs. I think it's safe to say, fingers crossed, that the Vikings will make the playoffs. Let's see. The Fizzling Soda says, "I feel like Kirk Cousins can't play outside a stadium because his accuracy is always off more outside, like when we lost to the Bears, Packers, and Chiefs." So here's why I'm going to disagree with you, the Fizzling Soda. I think it's coaching. I don't think it's Kirk Cousins. Yes, when you play away from your home stadium, it's going to be tough. And I get that playing outside is going to be tough. That's outside of the normal elements compared to US Bank Stadium. But think about week 2 last year against the Packers. Think about, was it week 3 or week 4 last year against the Rams at LA? Both outside. Kirk Cousins played like a superhero out there. He really, really did. So I don't think that Kirk Cousins has accuracy issues outside. I think that was more so his mental, playing a little bit scared, a little bit timid, but he's not playing like that the last 2 months. And I think it's more so coaching. I think Kirk Cousins has the ability to win any football game out there as far as in the NFL schedule and the playoffs. I think he can win any game out there as long as the coaching supports him. So, and again, against the Chiefs, I thought he played. There were a lot of throws as far as check downs or screens to the running backs that he missed, that he could have made better throws to, more accurate throws. But he also had 3 touchdowns on third downs in that game. So I thought he played well in that Chiefs game. So I think it was more coaching. I think he can play well indoors or outdoors. Let's see. Isaiah Mercado says Vikings need a home game on the playoffs. Vikings need a home game on the playoffs. Crowd noise is key. Yeah, if you can host a playoff game at US Bank Stadium, I think that would give obviously the edge to the Vikings because they're undefeated at home, but that could boost your momentum if you have to eventually go on the road, or who knows, depending on how things shape up. No, because if you win at home in the wild card round, that means you're the 3 seed, or you're a wild card team, a 5 or 6 seed. And then the following week, you're going to have to go on the road. So that will give you momentum to go up against either um, the Niners or the Saints, or maybe even the Seattle Seahawks, or however that shapes up. But I think depending on how that goes, you can get momentum to go off into the next round of the playoffs. But yes, host a playoff game. If you have to start from square one on the road, that's going to be tough. That's going to be really depending on who you play. Because I think they can play well on the road against the Packers. This new Vikings team, not like what the Packers saw week 2. I think they can play well against the Cowboys at AT&T Stadium. And I think they can play well against the Saints at the Superdome. The Superdome would be the toughest of the 3 for me personally if the Vikings had to travel anywhere. But I think the Vikings can play well. Now, against the Niners, at home or on the road, I think that could be a scary game. And the Seahawks as well. That's going to be the scary thing right there. Um, Tyler. Oh, Tyler. Tyler says, do you think it's a make or break year for Zimmer? Do you think Kubiak gets the job since the offense is carrying the team? Yeah, and I'm not gonna destroy Mike Zimmer on this live stream. I've said all I've had to say about him, and it's a bye week. I think it would be pretty lazy and kind of clickbaity for me to just be like, Zimmer sucks, share this video. Like, I do think it is a make or break year for Zimmer. I really do. You have to win a playoff game. And I know during this bye week, and now I'm not taking anything away from the Vikings coming back from that 20-0 deficit against the Broncos the week before last. That was really cool. But again, the regular season wins are nice. You need to beat a playoff team, or you need to win a playoff game. But then, they're having a good year this year against teams above 500. I don't have it in front of me, but I think they're at least 500 in that category right now. And the comparable piece to that is 2017 was the only other year that they've done well against 500 teams or above. So, and why is that? Because of offense, because we have an actual offense. But to answer your second question, yes, I think Zimmer, this is his make or break year. But even still, I wouldn't be surprised. Let's say if they lose in the first round or the wild card, whatever. I wouldn't be surprised if they lose, if they say, okay, you know what? Kirk Cousins, he's played well, and he's going through 2020. Mike Zimmer, we extended him a year. 2020, Rick Spielman, he's extended 2020 to where they say, if the Wolf brothers say, let's do this one more time. For me, it's a make or break year for Zim. If it doesn't work out, I would fire Zim. I would maybe keep Spielman, but I would probably fire him too. But I wouldn't be surprised if they were to keep Mike Zimmer. Now, to answer your second question, if they were to fire Zimmer, would Gary Kubiak take over? He's made it clear that he does not want to be a head coach, that he's perfectly fine in his position right now as assistant head coach. So I think, honestly, all the pressure, when you can just focus on your area of expertise, it takes a lot of stress compared to if you have to focus on other areas where you have to stand up on the podium. And if you're an offensive guy like Gary Kubiak, you have to then answer questions about the defense or, special teams or whatever. And there's a lot more pressure, a lot more media, a lot more camera interviews and stuff like that. And with the stress that he's had on his health, I think what he said is true. I think we have to take him at his word that right now he's good where he's at, that he hasn't had an itch to be a head coach, that assistant head coach is his deal. Let's see. Dave Jones says fireball. Fire both who? Spielman and Zimmer? Yeah, I mean, you don't win a playoff game, I'd fire both of them. That's just me. Eric Simon says, if everyone gets healthy, do you personally believe the Vikings are Super Bowl contenders? Yes. Yes, I do. Yeah, I mean, I said this. I said that the Vikings will finish. I predicted that the Vikings would have an 11-5 record. I think they'll be Super Bowl contenders in spite of Mike Zimmer. Now, I did say after the Bears game that I take it back because I don't think the Vikings can win squat with Mike Zimmer as head coach. But I will say this: I mean, you can call me bitching out or reneging on my last commentary about that. I think the Vikings can win a championship in spite of Mike Zimmer. I don't think the Vikings will win a championship because of Mike Zimmer, but I think they are Super Bowl contenders with the way that they're playing. The offense is carrying the defense, and I got to keep it 100. I have to be consistent. I've said all along for the last year and a half now that if our defense is subpar, it's okay as long as we have a really good offense, and we have that. So yes, our defense is for the most part average to subpar, and I saw a couple of you guys when I talked about that. Oh, but our scoring defense is great. Excuse me, it's great. What, top 5? And that's fine, but that brings into the factor bend but don't break defense. So you're below average in passing yards allowed per game. You're pretty good in rushing yards per game. And then third down defense is middle of the pack. You're a bend but don't break defense. And then also, let's be real. We talk about scoring defense. It's the law of averages that we're talking about here. Sometimes stats don't necessarily tell the whole story. If we look at the Vikings schedule and we look at the scoring defense, I think their scoring defense is like 18 points a game, something like that. Either way, they're a damn good scoring defense. I will give them credit for that. But if we look at the Vikings schedule and what they've benefited off as far as law of averages, you beat the Falcons. You allowed the Falcons to score 12 points. They suck ass. Okay, nothing to raise hell about. You beat the Raiders early on in the year. Now the Raiders, they've come on strong as of late before losing to Sam Darnold and the Jets yesterday on Sunday. But you gave up 14 points to the Raiders. Okay, fine. You gave up 16 points in a loss to Chase Daniel and the Chicago Bears. Chase Daniel, Matt Nagy, once Chase Daniel went in, they weren't game planning for Chase Daniel, or at least Matt Nagy wasn't anyway, to light up the field for 30 points to beat the Vikings. He was a game manager at that point. So, okay, you allowed 16 points against Chase Daniel. Then after that, 10 points against Daniel Jones and the New York Giants. But then after that, the rest of and 9 points against Case Keenum / Dwayne Haskins. So law of averages, how that plays out compared to you gave up 20 points to the Eagles, which, okay, that's pretty damn good. You gave up 30 points to the Lions. You gave up 24 points to the Dallas Cowboys. You gave up 26 points to the Chiefs, and you gave up 23 points to the Broncos. So law of averages right there. We all scoring defense. That's great. But look at the lower scores that they've allowed as far as the teams that they've gone up against compared to the actual good teams or good offenses. You got to look beyond just the blanket stats in some of those scenarios. So again, bend but don't break defense. Denver Broncos, the bend but don't break play, which J-Ron Curse. The Dallas Cowboys, bend but don't break play. Bend but don't break play was Eric Kendricks. Yes, it was J-Ron Curse in the Hail Mary, breaking up that Hail Mary pass. But really, for me, it was Eric Kendricks on that fourth down play, Dak Prescott to Ezekiel Elliott. So that's what I'm talking about as far as law of averages. Let's see. Let's see what else. What other thoughts you guys have? Minnesota Viking Mike says Zimmer never gets his team ready for big games. Always outcoach in big primetime games. Well, I mean, they did beat. Well, okay, the Redskins. They're not a big team. They did beat them in primetime, but they're not a big team. And yeah, when it comes to big games, he does usually have the team looking a little bit soft. So I think the Broncos, that was nice being one out of 100 teams, to come back from a 20-plus deficit going into the half. That's really, really nice, but it was against Brandon Allen and the Denver Broncos. The rest of this schedule for the Vikings, I mean, let's go through it right now. Seattle, I'll do the preview for that on Wednesday. The Lions, you know what? They got that kid. What's his name? Driscoll? What's his name? Is his name? God, what the hell is that dude's name? I think his name is Driscoll. Either way, they've got their backup quarterback. Who's to say if Matthew Stafford is going to play in that game? So we'll see how that turns out. The Chargers, The Chargers are falling apart. My God. Phillip Rivers went from being one of the best quarterbacks in the league to absolutely sucking. This dude needs to retire. He is finished. It's so sad. He's kind of fallen off like Xavier Rhodes, just at a different position because he was great, man. He was a great quarterback who I said never kind of like Kirk. Well, he was better than Kirk Cousins as far as career wise. But as far as similarities with Kirk Cousins not having the right resources, Dean Spanos is a joke of an owner. I followed the San Diego or now they're the LA Chargers, but I followed the Chargers organization forever. I know that team like the back of my hand. It's really sad to see Phillip Rivers, how he's absolutely fallen apart. With that said, if there's any team, if there's any game that Phillip Rivers would suddenly bounce back from, it would be against our secondary, the Vikings secondary, against the Minnesota Vikings. So, and that's a Sunday night game. Oh, we play the Chargers on Sunday night, but still, Phillip Rivers, I think the Vikings should win that game. Packers, that's the thing, and the Chicago Bears, I'm not worried about them. So, I mean, I guess we can do a quick review. So, Seahawks, I'm going to say that's a loss, but I'll do the preview and break down how the Vikings can possibly win that game on Wednesday. So, I'll say that's a loss. That puts you at 8-4. Lions, I'll say that's a win, puts you at 9-4. Chargers win, 10-4. Packers win, 11-4. Bears win week 17. Wait, let me make sure I did that right. 8-4, 9-4, 10-4, 11-4, 12-4. Okay, so I think the Vikings can finish. They should finish 12-4. If you can finish 13-3, man, that's legit right there. But yeah, I think that's schedule, man. The rest of the year, the rest of the way, I think yes, the Packers they have an easier schedule the rest of the way, but the Vikings they don't really have all that tough of a schedule if it makes sense. I think the rest of the way, the Chargers game is the trap game. But if you can beat them, then you're golden. Viewed as cute says they'll probably flex that game out of PT. Maybe or maybe. Well, actually, no, I'm not going to do. Let's look at the rest of the schedules going in. Maybe not because the Vikings are a hot team. Maybe they'll want to keep them on prime time, but because of Phillip Rivers, they may want to flex them out. You might be right. Let's see what else. What other thoughts you guys have? Rex, you confirmed what I said. Driscoll, yeah, he's the backup quarterback for the Lions right now, and he's actually been okay. I will say that he's better. I think he's better than Brandon Allen for what it's worth. So Brandon Allen, they went up 20-0 on us before we came back. I think Driscoll, I think he's a little bit better than Brandon Allen, and he has a better collection of weapons to work with than Brandon Allen did with the Denver Broncos. So you got Kenny Galladay, I think Marvin Jones, I think he's still healthy. You got TJ Hawkinson. They've got Bo Scarborough, that running back. I know what's that name? Kerryon Johnson. He's been out with injuries, so I don't know if Jesse James is still on that team, but still, their two wide receivers are better than collectively what the Denver Broncos have. Even though Noah Fant and Cortland Sutton, I think the Lions are just a little bit better in that regards. Let's see. DeMar Duke says Brian O'Neill is underrated. Well, it depends who you ask, because I think across the entire national media platform, no one really talks about offensive linemen. No one really does except for the sexy names. Tyron Smith, Jason Peters, even though he's not the same guy. Trent Williams, because of the whole fiasco he went through with the Washington Redskins. I don't think offensive linemen are really talked about. Jason Kelsey, because he's so outspoken. But if you want to go into the deep analytics-driven media, I don't really pay attention to PFF. No disrespect to PFF or any of those kind of sites. I'm just not a fan of advanced analytics. Like, that's just your end-all, be-all. Let's talk the advanced metrics of true completion percentage and this and that. And, I've seen guys on Twitter, Vikings Twitter, talk about how, Dalvin Cook, he's we talk about how Dalvin Cook is the most important player on offense for this team, when really, because of his stats and advanced analytics, he's really the fourth most important player on this offense, because Kirk Cousins is the quarterback and right tackle Brian O'Neill is back. And I'm just like, shut the hell up, bro. Like, I think, and no disrespect to those people out there that do that, even though I just said shut the hell up, bro. I get whatever. I don't give a damn. Whatever. I just think there's more to life than just advanced analytics. I think eye test is everything, but not just to go off on a tangent. Brian O'Neill, is he underrated? It just depends on who you ask. I don't know those sports media broadcasts or those national media folks that talk about offensive linemen all that much. For me, I know he's not. I know he's great. He's an all-pro right tackle this year. He's one of the best right tackles in the league this year. You guys find me a podcast that talks about offensive linemen in depth. Definitely don't steer me in the direction of one of those clowns that I did the media broadcast on as far as sensitive Vikings media. I don't care to listen to any of those jackasses podcasts about anything, because I think they're clowns. And I'd say it to their face if I was in Minnesota, if we ever cross paths. So outside of them, show me any podcast that talks about offensive linemen, and I can really give an accurate answer as far as if Brian O'Neill is underrated or not. Because I don't know. I just don't know. Quentin Nelson. Okay, that's a good one too. Quentin Nelson, you're right. People do talk about him as well. Jeremy Pakula says, "Hey, I like your channel." Hey, thanks, man. Appreciate that. RT Turtle says Tua could fall to 32, so the Vikings could draft him. I don't see the Vikings drafting a quarterback this year. I think the way that it went the first 4 games of the season, yes, I think absolutely they would have. But I think the way that Kirk Cousins has played, I don't think they're going to do it. I think they're going to ride this out. I don't think he's going to sign an extension. And I wouldn't even sign him to an extension right now on both sides. It doesn't make sense for Kirk Cousins to sign an extension on both sides. But before I get into that rant, I don't think the Vikings will draft the quarterback, because just like with Kyle Sloter, I firmly believe that they kept Sean Mannion over Kyle Sloter because Kyle Sloter is a threat to Kirk Cousins. He plays well, and if Kirk Cousins plays like shit, people will be banging down the doors for Kyle Sloter. Sean Mannion is the safe pick to where no one will bat an eye, so I get that. But if you draft a quarterback, that's just going to raise pressure on Kirk Cousins. He's played well. I think they're going to ride 2020 out, but I don't think it makes sense for either side to really extend Kirk Cousins. With that said, because on the side of Kirk Cousins, you purposely signed that 3-year deal because of the new CBA, the cap space and all that stuff is going to increase after the 2020 season. So you want to re-up or pony up on more dough in 2021. I get that. And in the case of the Vikings, I need to know, who's the offensive coordinator going to be? Is Gary Kubiak going to still be here? Because we've seen, if the game calling, if the coaching is not on par, there's only a few quarterbacks that can really take over if the coaching isn't great. Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees, but he's had Sean Payton his entire life. So I think even if Sean Payton wasn't there, Drew Brees could be that guy. Tom Brady. There are certain guys where, okay, if the coaching isn't great, quarterbacks can take their team over the top. Kirk Cousins is not that guy. I need to know who the offensive coordinator is going to be. So as long as I know that Gary Kubiak is still here, he says it now, yes, I'm good where I want to be, or maybe he goes and be an assistant head coach somewhere else. These players and coaches, they talk a big game now, but who knows, when the offseason comes, they go somewhere else. I need to know what the offensive system is like before I re-sign Kirk Cousins. And it would make sense for Kirk Cousins to re-sign after that the CBA gets changed, or the contract, whatever goes up, where the contract goes up. Okay, fine, because this is the best that he's looked in his entire career. So if he can come back to the Minnesota Vikings, we have a good offensive structure, I'm good with it. But I don't think that the Vikings will draft a quarterback in this year's draft. I think it's going to be cornerback, offensive lineman, cornerback, offensive lineman, and then after that, get whatever you can. Nova Kid 89 says, what does Xavier Rhodes have to do to be effective again. So much like Mike Zimmer, I'm not going to destroy Xavier Rhodes on here because I've said all I've had to say about him. At this point, it's coaching. It's all coaching. Mike Zimmer, you already know how bad Xavier Rhodes has been. You keep putting him out on the field, that's on you. But as far as Xavier Rhodes, what he needs to do to be effective again, he might be better off playing safety. He really, really might be. Because I think, was it Charles Woodson that converted to safety? You've seen like past examples of cornerbacks that have been good, but they transition to safety before they eventually retire. I think Xavier Rhodes would be better off playing safety, but unfortunately, we've got a logjam at safety. We've got Harrison Smith, we've got Anthony Harris, we've got Jaron Kearse, at least for this year anyway. Andrew Sandeo, he's whatever. So I would say, if anything, Xavier Rhodes would be the fourth cornerback or the fourth safety in the depth chart for the Vikings. He needs to play safety or big nickel or play tight ends or play matchup against tight ends. But as far as like matching up against wide receivers, he's just not a good cornerback anymore. He's not a good football player at his position. He's one of the worst cornerbacks in the league. Play safety, play against tight ends, big nickel, whatever, to where he's a physical dude. So go up against other physical dudes to where their footwork isn't as great as, let's say, a Cortland Sutton or a Darius Slayton or any of those guys, and you'll be fine. But there's too many, it's too much of a log jam in those areas for Xavier Rhodes. Big nickel, that's Jaron Kearse. Third safety, that's Jaron Kearse. He just doesn't fit on this team. He needs to be gone. Should have traded him. Stephen A. Smith says, how can we go back to the great Vikings defense we're so used to? I think it starts in the draft. Get a cornerback. I think our safeties are fine. I think our linebackers have been fine. I think Anthony Barr, he's had a pretty good year, but the last couple of weeks, I feel like he's been kind of okay. I think Anthony Barr is who he is at this point. He's had a good year. He's been better than what I expected him to be. But overall, I think our linebackers have been okay. Our defensive line, I think our interior D line could get better. But what could our defense do to get back to what we're seeing? Draft a cornerback, draft an elite corner, bank on Mike Hughes getting back to his elite form or in 2020, getting back to his elite form like he was in 2018. Holton Hill, hope he stays off the weed or wherever drugs or whatever substances that there are out there. And then coaching. I think that's really it. I think if our cornerbacks just play better, Trey Waynes, I wouldn't be upset if the Vikings move on from Trey Waynes at this point. I think he's had a pretty good year or an okay year. There's been a lot of games where he's gotten exposed. The Chiefs game, I mean, they were targeting this dude all game long, and he was going up against Tyreek Hill. Nobody looks good against Tyreek Hill, but I think cornerback is the one glaring weakness on this team. If our cornerbacks play better, and if we can stop having our cornerbacks play 6 or 7 yards off their receivers, that goes back to coaching and scheme, then I think we'll be fine. I think that's the blueprint for our defense to get better. And I think we need an interior defensive lineman to really, I don't know. I mean, Linval Joseph, we'll see if he comes back next year. Shamar Stephen, whatever. I just think we need somebody to really fill in that gap right there. Antoine Winfield Jr., the Sage Millennial, says he plays safety, right? So, I mean, if you're going to move on from Anthony Harris, okay, fine, but I'm pretty sure he plays safety. I think we're fine as safety, though. I think we're fine as, if anything, I would look at Stephon Diggs' brother, cornerback out of Alabama. I think I would look at him. Trayvon Diggs, that his name? I will look at him at Alabama. He did not look good in LSU against the LSU Tigers, that game that what's his name? Joe Burrow, the quarterback, won over there at Tuscaloosa. He did not look good in that game, but if anything, I would look at Trayvon Diggs. Antoine Winfield Jr., it's a nice story. If you're moving on from Anthony Harris, okay, fine, but I would look at corner first. Let's see. DeMar Duke says, Barr disappears a lot to me. Haven't seen him make plays since the Giants game. Love him to death, though. But because here's the thing, everyone knows what I've said about Anthony Barr before, and I think he's had a better year. There has been quite a few times where he has disappeared in the past, but he's also made plays too. I will debate anybody. Anybody. Again, I think he's fine on this team. He is who he is this year because his cap rate is so low. I think most of the money he's making is in the signing bonus. But next year, that's when it goes up to like $12.5 million against the cap. That's when I'm really going to be like, okay, bro, what are you doing? What do you? Because right now he's like 4.5, maybe 5 million against the cap. So I'm okay with it. But next year, yeah. But the last couple of weeks, he hasn't really popped out. I'm not going to compare him to Eric Kendricks because Eric Kendricks is playing like one of the best linebackers in the league. But Anthony Barr, yeah, he could play better, but we'll see how the rest of the year plays out. We'll do a couple more before we end this. Let's see. Kid says, K1D says, how happy are you about the O-line this year? I'm excited. I'm ecstatic, dude. I love the O-line. I think the O-line is great. There's been before it was so many holes on the offensive line. I know we need to replace Riley Reef at left tackle, but for all intents and purposes, he's been an average left tackle. He's been okay. Pat Elflein sucks. He is who he is. Garrett Bradbury, he's going to get better. Josh Klein, when he's not suffering concussions, has been amazing. Dakota Dozier, outside of the Broncos game, has been lights out. And Brian O'Neill is an all-pro right tackle. I swear, it's funny. Of all the people that had, because early on in the year, I swear to God, everybody was saying how much the offensive line sucks. And I swear I was one of the few people that said, yo, our offensive line is fine. Don't worry about it. Our offensive line is legit. They're going to be just fine. And they've gotten better and better over the last couple of weeks, except for the Kansas City Chiefs game. That interior offensive line against the Chiefs was terrible. But I'm good with the offensive line. FR Maria 09 says, do you know anything about Mike Wabi, the analyst for the Mike Wabshaw? I have no idea. I don't know, and I'm not going to speculate about anything with Wabi. I know he was a Vikings employee for a long time. I have no idea. I'm not going to speculate. It is what it is. I don't know who his replacement is going to be, but I did notice that normally he's with PA in those games and cheering on the Vikings when they make a good play, but he hasn't been there. So I have no idea what's going on. And I don't know if unless a source leaks it out, I don't think we'll ever know. And quite honestly, I don't really care. Unless he did something terrible. Then it's like whatever. Let's do two more. Sage Millennial says, is Eric Wilson the new man on the Minnesota Vikings? Bum 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 bum. I don't know, man. Everyone's trying to figure out who that new man is for Lizzo. I have no idea. I hope someone breaks that mystery out there because I would like to find out. It was a catchy tune. And let me say this. I know I've got some Packers followers out there. No disrespect. But I just thought it was so soft and incredibly weak how your radio station out there blurred out, blocked out, censored out, like FCC airwaves, like Vikings is just an offensive name to say out there on the radio. I thought that was incredibly weak, dude. But I'd like to find out who the new man is. And we'll do one more. One more. Let's see here. Andrew Omalea says, who do you think we will lose? Or we'll do a couple more. I always have fun doing this stuff with you guys. I always say we'll do 5 more, we'll do 3 more, and then we end up doing like 10 more. Andrew Omalia says, who do you think we will lose over the offseason other than Rhodes? Well, I mean, according to J-Ron Curse, we're going to lose J-Ron Curse on Twitter, like he said. I think we're going to lose. Well, Kyle Rudolph is always up in the air, I think, depending on how the rest of the season plays out because with Adam Thielen being out, he's been amazing. But with him being in, has he been really worth the contract that he signed? I know talent wise he is, but has he been really worth the contract that he signed when all hands are on deck, when all he's doing is blocking? I'm not so sure. I think he's someone to look at. Everson Griffin, maybe because the cap space is going to get a lot tighter, especially with Anthony Barr's cap space jumping up about $8 million. I would say Everson Griffin. I would say maybe Kyle Rudolph. Ron Curse is out there. You already talked about Xavier Rose. I think those are the first few folks that I'm looking at. Let's see. FR Maria 09 says, "Are you going to work for the Vikings someday?" The Vikings will literally never hire me. They will never hire me. I've already accepted that because I think in order to work for a team and in order to be a media person, a media figurehead for a team directly, you have to really kiss their ass. And I'm not trying to be disrespectful to the Vikings or any team in the National Football League, but you gotta play the game when it comes to that. You gotta say everything's great. The Vikings are looking amazing, and if they get blown out 38-7 in the NFC Championship game where they're not competitive, you gotta say, well, better luck next year. You can't really be critical at all when it comes to the team. You got to play the company line, and that's not what I'm really interested in. And then not only that, they will never hire me. I know they pay attention. Mike Zimmer pays attention to me, okay? I'm not trying to upsell this podcast or try to act like my stuff don't stink or whatever. But Mike Zimmer pays attention. I know his daughter hates me. I know the Mike Zimmer Foundation, they've liked a couple of my tweets when I said it's cold as hell out here in Minnesota when I was out there. They liked the tweet. I'm assuming that they liked it because they liked the fact that I was cold and freezing in Minnesota because of all the stuff that I've said about Mike Zimmer. The Minnesota Vikings will never hire me. I know that will never happen. Um, let's see. Um, boom, boom, boom. Viewed as cute says it's too cold up here for Randy to stay up here and work. Not at all. I'd move to Minnesota. I like Minnesota. I love the people out there. I love the bars out there. The shopping, the Mall of America, as far as no sales tax on clothing. I shop for clothes, shoes all the time. Like you see those shirts I wear, I get a shit ton of shirts. I love them. I like Minnesota. Every time I go there, I say to myself, I could see myself living here. I mean, the opportunity has to present itself, but no, I wouldn't rule out Minnesota to live there. Um, let's see. Thoughts on MVP race according to Tang Yang. So that's a very good question. Before I would have said Christian McCaffrey, but the most valuable player. I think all things taken away, take away the records of the team. I think the most valuable player has been Christian McCaffrey, but record plays a part in it too. Because most valuable player in terms of any sport also means the team success overall. I think Christian McCaffrey has been tasked on to do the most out of any player in the NFL. But when it comes to winning games, Michael Thomas, Lamar Jackson, Russell Wilson, I want to see a couple more games for Kirk Cousins because I think for the most part it's been Dalvin Cook. We can throw him in there as well. If Kirk Cousins can have a couple of more games, especially when Dalvin Cook gets held in check like he did against the Chiefs and he did against the Broncos, I think he scored a touchdown late in that Broncos game, but he got held in check for the most part. Then Kirk Cousins can get added to that too. I would say that it's between those five guys: Michael Thomas, Lamar Jackson, Dalvin Cook, Russell Wilson, and Kirk Cousins. If he does that for a couple more games. Now, especially in this Seattle game, we'll see what happens. We'll see what's up with that. But those will be my five guys so far. Let's see. So we'll do. FR Maria says, "What you gonna do if the Vikings win the Super Bowl?" If they win the Super Bowl, I will have the most. I don't know, man. It's crazy because when the team wins, it's this weird feeling. I'm gonna tell you something right now. All the teams that I root for: Washington Capitals, Dallas Mavericks, Washington Nationals, and the Minnesota Vikings. They all have, or at least before 3 of them have won championships, they all have had one thing in common. They have done so well in the regular season. They've done such a good job breaking records in the regular season, MVPs, what have you, but they always choke in the playoffs, all of them. And then when they finally win the championship, it's just finally, oh my God, years and years of just suffering. It's over with. They won. It validates all the suffering that I've gone through. And so when the Dallas Mavericks won the championship in 2011 against the Miami Heat, LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, Chris Bosh, that first year of not 1, not 2, not 3, not 11, whatever, that was one of those like, F you, F everybody out there that hated on the Mavericks and whatever. It felt so good. When the Capitals won, they always lost to the Penguins. They just always choked in the playoffs, and they finally won. They beat the Las Vegas Golden Knights in the first year that they were a new expansion team. That was great to see. And then the Washington Nationals, you want to talk about always kicking ass in the regular season. They never won a playoff series. You want to talk about going up against the Brewers in the wild card game. They went up against the Dodgers in the first round, I think it was, and then the Cardinals in the second round, and then the Astros who've been cheating this entire time. That's what makes. I'm not going to go on this rant, but I just want to say this because since you guys are watching, I want to say this. It makes it so much sweeter that the Nationals won their title. For me, their first title. I know they won it as like the Washington Senators. Whatever, that doesn't count for me. Whatever. It makes it so much sweeter that the Nationals won their first title with the Astros, who mother-freaking cheated. They cheated. All the banging on the doors just to get when it's off-speed pitches, whatever, banging on the doors when it's not a fastball, or I don't know if it's the other way around, but just cheating? Oh, my God. And the Astros, they were the heavy favorites. They were the ones that were supposed to win. It made it so much sweeter. But to get back to your point, FR Maria 09, if the Vikings win the Super Bowl title, I will come out to Minnesota. I will be out there for the parade. I will be out there to celebrate with you guys because I want to see the Vikings win, man. The Vikings are the only team left out there as far as the 4 teams that I root for that hasn't won yet. I will be out there front and center with you guys out there celebrating, straight up. We'll do one more. Okay, last one. We'll finish with this. Minnesota Viking Mike says, after this year, does Dalvin get an extension? I certainly hope so. I think if anything, it would benefit the Vikings more so than Dalvin Cook. Because if I'm Dalvin Cook's agent, I would tell him, hell no. Play out your contract and wait and get another year where you'll get close to 2,000 yards or whatever, and you'll build your value up. That's what I would tell him if I were his agent. It would benefit the Vikings more to sign him this next offseason because the leverage that the Vikings would have in that is, listen, you've been hurt your first 2 years. You've been dealing with injuries. This is the first full year that you've been legitimately healthy. We're going to give you all this money right now because who's to say that you're going to be healthy next season? And then you could get him for a discount compared to, I don't think the Vikings should sign him at a premium like Ezekiel Elliott or a Todd Gurley because we've seen Ezekiel Elliott has been healthy. Todd Gurley, not so much, but I just think the health factor with Dalvin Cook has really played a role in all of this. I would sign him to a long-term deal. With running backs, I get it. You can find them a dime a dozen. But Dalvin Cook is special, especially when it comes to this offense. And Alex Madison, he's been nice. But I just think Dalvin Cook is one of the best players in the league at making something out of nothing. His talent, the talent that he has is incredible. You can't necessarily replace that so easily. So I would sign him to a new contract deal next offseason. If it goes beyond that, I think we're in trouble because then we're looking at paying him as far as the highest paid running back in league history. And I don't think you want to necessarily do that unless you're getting rid of Anthony Barr or other guys that are going to be high up against the cap. So that's what I would say on that. Sign him next year. It just depends on what his agent says for Dalvin Cook next offseason. So that'll be it for me, guys. This has been a lot of fun. I was planning on 30 minutes of this, but we turned into an hour and 9 minutes. This was a lot of fun, guys. So just recap real quick. I said that there was going to be 3 videos this week. That is, I guess you can say it was a lie because I'm an idiot. I didn't realize that Thanksgiving was this week because I'm an absolute moron. So instead of 3 this week, I'm going to do 2. This was one of them. So this is number 1, the YouTube live stream. But then the second video is going to be on Wednesday, previewing Vikings versus Seattle. We'll see you then. Let me know any feedbacks or thoughts that you guys have. Goodness gracious, tongue twisted here. But I appreciate all you guys that have been following this podcast. I really do. You guys mean so much to the buildup of this podcast. We'll see you then on Wednesday.